Louisiana, and I went to Lincoln Elementary and Carroll High School, and later to college at Grambling State University. Coming from Monroe, you didn't have a lot of role models to look up to. You didn't have anybody that you grew up and you go, you know what? I want to be like them when I grow up. You know, we grew up in a poor neighborhood, but it was rich in family love. We called it the Boogie T love, you know, and we have our Boogie T family. And that was real important. It was really like a family raising family. Wow, let me tell you about my love for computers and where it started. When I was 14 years old, my older sister gave me an Apple II GS when I was at her house in New Mexico on the Air Force Base. I'm an Air Force brat, I admit it. After my dad retired, my sister married someone in the Air Force, so that's where I was normally at on the summer. And she had a computer, and that was one of the best summers of my life. When I came back home to Monroe, though, nobody had a computer, and I was so irritated. I couldn't wait to get back to New Mexico the next summer just so I could get on the computer. That was my summer thing, playing on the computer. So the question is, when did I start my first company? I started my first company in 1991 in my mom's sewing room. I called it Payton's Word Processing. She brought me my first word processor from Sears. And with my word processor, I would do things like programs for funerals and churches, and I would do business cards and banners for people. And I just thought it was so awesome. And, that was when I knew that this was probably a career I wanted to do. They said if it's something that you would do for free, that's probably what you should do as a career. So the question is, how did I start out in computers? So I told you where I got my first computer, but when I left Grambling for the summer, I did an internship in San Jose for this company called Megatest, and they made motherboards. Well, at the time, for a kid my age, being on call 24/7 was not fun for me. But this is when I was introduced to Texas Instruments, Sun Micro, AMD, and all the big companies. But I came back to Grambling and decided that that's not the job I wanted as a product support administrator. The one thing that I learned is that foreigners thought that we were really lazy at that point. So I went back to Grambling, still studied programming and computer information systems because that's all we knew. So I guess the question is, Bonita, how did you get into all of these companies? Well, the best way when it comes to IT to get into the big companies is through contract companies. Most of the time, the big companies hire contract companies who hire employees. So, where you are not an employee of the company, you work for the contract company, but you work as an employee of the company. Sounds really confusing, right? So, it kind of goes like this: contract company hires me, contract company sends me to work at places like ExxonMobil, and I work as a contractor for ExxonMobil through this company. But every day, my job is at ExxonMobil, and I report there to the managers at ExxonMobil. It was the same way with Enron. Oh, yes, I did say Enron, that word. Okay. So the question is, Bonita, tell us about your educational background. Well, my educational background started with my college at Grambling State University for computer information and programming. Not really what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something in computers. I got pregnant while I was in school, so I came out and I went to Louisiana Business College and I completed there another program, computer operations and programming. I left there and I moved to California and I got a job. I came back and went back to Grambling to complete my degree in computer information systems. In 1991, I decided to go to paralegal school. In 2013, when I lived in Michigan, I got my management degree while also taking small business entrepreneurial classes and starting my marketing degree. My first experience as a manager working in infrastructure for service desk. Well, I was working as software support and I was really new. Like I had only been there like 3 months on the phone, but I had learned a lot. And I used to get up and I used to walk up and down the aisle and I used to tell everybody else what they needed to do to get on and off the phone. We would see our queue turn red and it means we had a whole lot of phone calls holding and we needed to get off of the phone. So I would do what I had to do. I would take my calls and I would help everybody else. Well, the owner happened to come in one weekend. We had high call volume and we had a lot of supervisors called off. That's where Joe Jacoboni found me. And I guess the rest is history because he gave me my opportunity in management at that point. The job that started me off in the infrastructure world was software support. In software support, we outsourced. We were an outsourced company, and we had companies like Microsoft, and we had Gateway, we had AST, and we had Toshiba, and we did phone support for them. And that was probably one of the most exciting times in my life. I remember when I first got the job, I called home and I told my mom, and I was like, Mom, you wouldn't believe what kind of job I got. I get to talk on the phone all day and I get to fix computers and I won't get written up. Because most of my career I got wrote up before this job because I was working on computers and talking on the phone. So that's where my start, and that's where even my first management position happened with Joe Jacoboni, the owner of the company. Saw me in action running operations one weekend. So my next job after leaving the call center is I got to do desktop support. So I guess that's supposed to be the next level up. So I was working at Randall's Food and Pharmacy, and I was in the IT department, and it was only like 4 or 5 of us. And after working for Gateway, boy, I had that attitude that you couldn't tell me nothing. I felt like I knew everything. And so it was a female named Gina who was actually on the network team. And she was like, hey, if you teach me what you know, I'll teach you what I know. And so that's how I got into networking because of Gina. And it was pretty exciting. I got to learn Novell and Exchange, and I got to learn Windows NT. And, from there is how I got into networking. So right now, infrastructure was really a fun thing for me. So the question is, Bonita, tell us about some of the companies that you worked for. So I started my career in California with working for a company called Megatest, which was a computer company. I also worked for Pepsi 7 Up and 7 Up Pepsi. I also took a job working in many different areas in Houston. Like I worked for Randall's Food and Pharmacy. I worked for software support. I worked for Matrix Marketing. I worked for Enron. I worked for ExxonMobil. I worked for Waste Management. Oh my God. When I moved to California, I worked for American Express. I also worked in New York.